You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of seven-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact. Hello and welcome to another wonderful episode. We have a lovely guest here today. We have Tia Williams, former executive, challenging personality-based leadership development, focused on building modern, high-growth leaders through systematic, skills-based development. Welcome, Tia.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad to have you because I'm super interested in your subject about whole brain leadership and also about your book that just came out called Born a Statistic, Built to be a Leader. So why don't you please start unpacking what is whole brain leadership for first?
Sure. So whole brain leadership is really, if you think about how people think, they think with either their left brain or their right brain. Either they're highly emotionally intelligent or they're highly analytical. And I teach basically how to use both sides of your brain to lead. And really what that means is integrating the two, right? Not like defaulting to one and then defaulting to the other, but actually integrating it, which makes for stronger, better decision making.
Okay, so that's fascinating because we all know about, drawing on the right side of the brain and we click, and I can feel myself clicking from one side for creative stuff to another side. How do we, and usually people can't do that. They usually can't use both. This is revolutionary. How do you train people when we don't use our whole brain, but we're using both sides? Okay. How do you do that? How do you get people to train themselves to key into the creative and the more analytical?
Yeah. So from a leadership perspective, it's easier to explain from an analytical perspective. So if you look at people who are highly analytical thinkers, a lot of times they struggle with like emotional intelligence. What I teach them to do is to use that emotional intelligence as data. So by looking at it as data inputs, they're actually able to then learn how to say, okay, this is the action or the emotion that I need to apply in order to get the result that I want, or in order to actually understand what the challenge is that I need to address. So that way, if you think about, let's say, as an example, your team is struggling with a project, right? And everybody goes quiet in a meeting. This allows, by using their analytical brain, they can evaluate the situation at all as data inputs and then say, based on this, here's the action that I should take in order to get to the bottom of the problem. Right? So it's really about it's like amplifying your analytical skill in order to tap into what feels, inauthentic and foreign, which is understanding the emotions of others and why people take actions based on specific emotions.
Okay, so how do people develop emotional intelligence?
I think what it is instead of saying, hey, you need to feel more, instead, we actually have to look at how do you interpret people's emotions, and as opposed to saying that you have to feel more, right? We're telling people who struggle with emotional intelligence, it's like saying, hey, you got to put a square peg in a round hole, right? So we're trying to make them do things that are inauthentic by actually processing everything as an input. They're able to use those logical strengths to think about it from the perspective of troubleshooting, as an example, right? So what would be the first step if I was actually trying to troubleshoot a problem, right? And it's just as challenging for people who are more high EQ, right? If you're highly emotionally intelligent, you struggle with that analysis part. So in that instance, you might say, my gut is telling me this, right? So how do I get a leader, a senior manager who maybe isn't high EQ? How do I get them to understand that my gut is right? Well, in that instance, we take a hypothesis, right? So you think about, how do I form a hypothesis to create a data-based answer that I can then go to my supervisor with and say, hey, here's the data that backs up that intuition, that gut feeling that I had. So really, this is about not just the analytical leader. This is about the leader who is high EQ as well. It's about how do you take the thing that you are really good at and apply it, skill stacking, and apply it to the thing that you're not as good at.
This is interesting. As you're speaking, I'm realizing it's almost like tripwiring the data. They might not feel it, but they'll get the data as if they felt it, right? So sort of not
right. The data backs up what you felt.
Yeah, there's the data. I might not feel empathetic. I might not feel this, but I have some data that shows me what I would be feeling if I had EQ. This is fascinating. Okay, so basically it's not like you need to feel more, because you're right. You can't just say to people, change your personality right now, do it. You're saying you're aiding them with the data so that it's as if they have emotional intelligence, because they can still take the actions as if, and near enough is good enough. Okay, so, all right.
Near enough is good enough, right? So the people who are on the other side of that are on the receiving end, they still have that end result of, wow, I've built trust with this leader because they heard me, right? And they took action on what I was feeling. Right. So people don't have to be inauthentic, right? They can be their authentic selves, and still give other people what they need.
Right. It's kind of a cheat sheet in a way, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I love it. So you found a way to get around all that rather than forcing people to be something or they're not, or feel something they're probably never going to be good at because it's just not their personality.
Absolutely.
All right. So what happens when people apply this? And do you have actual templates and trackers when you're working with people?
I actually have an entire framework. And actually that framework is laid out in my book. But the intent of it is for us to say, start with where a person actually is, look at their strengths, and then systematically go through and apply and help them to see how to apply those templates, right? How to apply how other people are feeling, what actions do you take against that? And we do a lot of that through coaching. Then the other thing is, in a high growth environment, everything is moving super fast, right? So what we actually do is build a system around those actions. And the system is like guardrails. So it helps to protect the person or the leader from making mistakes, that go against the system. So what I mean by that is, if I'm someone who struggles with emotional intelligence, we have a communication protocol that defines how we communicate with people, the boundaries with which we communicate within, and that helps me, to keep from making mistakes that result in fires, right? That we have to put out. So it's not just using your whole brain, it's making sure that you have the right systems in place to protect you with those guardrails while you learn and grow as a leader. And the two are important together, actually quite important together, because what happens if you're a company where your leaders move, right? People come and go. Rather than having to say, this, I got to start all over again with a new leader, and how is this going to impact our team? You're putting the person into a system. And that actually helps to protect that new leader, right? To make sure that they have what they need to give their new team, with the right have the right approach so that you can maintain that high performance that team had with their previous leader.
Okay, so what I love about this is a system. What I love about this is what you're saying is people are not born with charisma and you're a leader or not. What you're saying is you can apply this to probably almost anybody if they have a will to be a good leader. And we can develop leaders with this system of just data. Okay, this is kind of revolutionary. Now, Tia, you have an amazing story. I was very impressed with your story. How did you get to the point where you created all this? Tell us a little bit about your journey now.
Sure. So not to go too far back, but actually, I was actually born to teenage parents. My parents were not even old enough to drive. My father used to ride his bicycle to come see me. And that really just lays the groundwork to help you understand that my life was full of trials and challenges. And eventually, I wasn't able to go to college as much as I wanted to. So I started out my first leadership role. I was 17 years old, and I actually had to fire someone within my first 2 weeks. And that was tough, right? So what this really did was it really laid the groundwork, all of those experiences that I had to help me understand a lot of the things that became foundational in my actual leadership system. And I eventually came to work for a company where I was promoted 5 times in 2 years to become an executive. And as part of that journey, I had a 100% remote team, and they were globally remote. And it was two fierce competitors. The companies honestly just didn't really like each other. And one bought the other one. One was acquired by the other. And I was tasked with bringing those two conflicting sides together. And through that's how I actually finalized the pieces of the leadership equation. And I didn't really know it at the time, but as I started to really look back, I can see from throughout my entire career and through through those acquisitions, all of the pieces that actually eventually came together to give my entire system.
Okay, so now as I'm listening, I kind of think, well, Tia, you were born with a certain personality, and it seems like you were kind of born a leader. So maybe you had a bit of a head start there because not many 17-year-olds do what you did. And also, I remember something you told me when we first met, that at one point you had a job and you were driving how long back and forth from the job?
I did. I had my first tech job. I drove 100 miles each way.
Mm.
And it really didn't bother me at all. I actually really enjoyed it because I felt like it was it was a new skill that I was learning. Somebody gave me the opportunity to prove myself. And I was taking advantage of that opportunity. Every role that I've ever taken, I approach it like I have something to prove.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's just my nature, right? Because my mother taught me to work hard and my husband taught me to work smart.
Okay. And I think you had children at the time when you were doing that. Was that correct?
I did. I absolutely did. I have 2 daughters, and one was in school and the other one was still a toddler when I first started working in
Okay,
tech.
so let's not downplay that you were a mother of a very young child, driving 200 miles per day to a job, taking care of the family, and you have a husband. Let's not downplay. Most people wouldn't just do that; they'd be complaining or saying this is hard. So, Tia, let's give you some credit that you were born with a very gritty personality. I'm sure that your mama obviously instilled some really incredible work into you.
I like to tell the story. I'm the oldest child of the oldest child of the oldest child. My mother was the oldest of 8. And so the only thing I've ever seen in my life is hardworking women.
Fantastic. So, how do we, and this is just, I'm going to be the devil's advocate here a little bit. How do we teach people that don't have that background, don't have that personality of leadership and grit and all of that? Can this be taught to people that don't have that, background and foundation that you have?
Absolutely. I've been teaching the system to people for years, even without even knowing that it was a full system. But all of the leaders that I work with, I had a team of 8 leaders who half were highly emotionally intelligent, the other half were highly analytical, and this system works. It works for them. It worked for them, and it also worked tying those systems into it. That's how we made it through those acquisitions. By the end of the acquisition, we had retained 90% of our key talent, and we had saved $1 million annually just by improving our productivity workflows because we were using these systems.
Amazing. Now, tell me, you have a belief that there is a huge crisis going on in mid-management right now. Tell us a little bit more about that, and why do you think that is, and what is the solution to that?
Yeah. So for me, the middle management crisis really has come to a head because a lot of leaders are not getting trained at all. Right. So you come through the ranks, you're a high performer, and you're congratulations promoted to a leader, but nobody teaches you how to lead. And the interesting part about it is, although we don't teach these people how to lead. We want to hold them accountable for how to lead. We want them to know how to be strategic. We want them to achieve certain goals. So what they learn is to be a taskmaster. They don't learn to really lead people. And as a result of all of the things that have happened recently, we see all these managers and leaders being laid off, the middle management layer. It's because they don't see the strategic value, but we're trying to hold them to a standard for something that we've never taught them.
Interesting. So the solution is just train people better.
That's part of the solution. Yes, definitely. They need to be trained better. Because a lot of people are burnt out. A lot of leaders, they don't feel like they're like, hey, I don't even know if I'm really cut out for this, and it's because they don't really have the right leadership skills. So it's about teaching the people part, the human part, as well as how to manage things like workloads. We really expect leaders to say yes to everything, right? We don't really want them to say no, even when they're like, my team can't take any more work. But they don't know how to really justify that. They don't know how to do a workload analysis and say, hey, my team is at max capacity. Here's what we're short, right? These are being able to do those types of things would essentially change not only the way that we look at middle managers, but it would also help us because so many teams and people are unhappy. And it's all because of how we built this middle management layer. We built a generation of leaders who really are not prepared to lead.
For sure. Okay. Now I have a question that's a little bit out of left field, because as you were talking, I thought, well, wait a minute. I have 2 daughters. You have 2 daughters. What do you have to say to young women these days? I'm sure you have an opinion on that, which is not normally what people are asking you, but I'm just interested. What's your message to young women?
My message to young women is, one, support each other. Right? I think there's a lot of times where we feel like we're competing against other women as opposed to supporting each other. So I think that's one really important point. The other thing I really think is that we have to really look beyond the work environment in terms of, hey, we're competing in industries against a lot of men, particularly in high growth environments. And you have to have that inner confidence, right? That belief in yourself, and not let the things that happen in those environments detract you from your track, from who you were meant to be.
Okay, very wise words. Well, Tia, this has been highly interesting. What is something that you want to leave as a gift for people as far as mindset? Because, you didn't get where you are without a specific mindset. What is that specific mindset?
Yeah, for me, it's leaders are built, not born, right? So I teach leadership as a trade skill, and anybody who wants to be a leader can be a leader by building those skills.
Okay, so the mindset is, don't think that you were branded a certain way, because you can develop, and let go of the mindset of, oh, I'm just not good at that. Is that what you're kind of saying?
Yeah, so don't let imposter syndrome hold you back, right? If being a leader is something that you want to do, it's possible, right? You just have to learn those skills. Leadership is not a personality trait. It's a set of skills.
Right. Okay. Well, I agree. Tia, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everybody, for listening to this very interesting show, and we will see you on the next one. You're listening to the Business Wealth Impact Podcast, your source for empowering information and cutting-edge ideas from the world's top minds. I'm your host, Jeanne Amlour, founder of 7-figure coaching company, Jeanne Amlour International. Join me on a journey to unleash your potential and create your highest success. Welcome to Business Wealth Impact.